And that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to another edition of Sports Talk 1240. I'm your host, Rob Cramer. Thank you for sticking around here with me tonight on this beautiful Sunday night. And it's about as windy and cold as it gets now, so we're starting to really get into these winter months. So thanks for sticking here with me on on this November 15th edition of Sports Talk 1240. Like I said, I'm your host, Rob Cramer, and we got a lot to get into tonight as the Giants came away with a big win today against the Eagles. The Mets introduced Steve Cohen as their new majority owner last week. The Yankees are in hot pursuit of DJ LeMahieu returning to their team, and so many other things to get into. But before we all get into that, I want to give a couple of plugs. You can follow Sports Talk 1240 on Twitter at Sports Talk 1240. You can go to our Facebook and give us a like on Sports Talk 1240. You can check us out on sportstalk1240.com. Also check out the AM 1240 WGBB website, and you'll have everything else that you want to see. All of our old shows, all of our anything else that you want to check out, any of the hosts, anything along those lines. So thanks for checking out Sports Talk 1240 tonight with me. And you can check me out on Twitter as well at Kramer, my last name, New York, NY. Kramer, NY. So now we got all that out of the way. Now we got there's a lot of the Jets head off this week, which is a big break for Jet fans. At least we didn't have to suffer through the indignity of the first 0-10 start in team history, at least this week. It'll probably be happening next Sunday, which I'm sure we'll all be wrapped up in that. But there was a little bit of calm this week in the for New York football, as the New York Giants ended up coming away with their second consecutive win. That's right. In 2020, I'm telling you right now that the New York Giants have actually won back-to-back games in a year where the first, let's see, the Jets started off 0-9, the Giants started off 1-7, which means that out of a possible 17 games, I'm sorry, the Jets and the Giants were combined 1-16 coming into the last, coming into this recent stretch for the Giants. But after knocking off the Washington Redskins last Sunday, the Giants turned around and did the double dip today as they beat the Eagles 27-17 in Philadelphia. This is actually the first time that the Giants have beaten the Eagles since November of 2016. It's been pretty much exactly 4 years since the Giants have beat them. 8 consecutive losses. Just a real bad, taste in your mouth every single time. It's like the Giants have had many leads and many opportunities to win games of those past 8, but none of them worked out. They found a way to blow it and cost themselves the game in the end pretty much every time over the course of the last 4 years. Not today, as Daniel Jones did a good job. 21 of 28, 244 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. Um, he had that big run where one thing I've noticed about Daniel Jones is you might not be blown away with his ability to protect the ball. Like he does have a fumbling issue. I think in his NFL career he's fumbled something like 22 times, which is just insane. and in but what I have noticed is that Daniel Jones has great legs. He is able to be mobile inside and outside of the pocket. He's able to get away from pressure. And when the Giants tailor their offense to him in a running perspective, he is able to make things happen. Like I said, he was 21 of 28 with 244 yards today, no touchdowns, no picks. That's not going to knock your socks off. It's pretty good. If your team plays well enough around you, the defense holds up their end of the bargain. It's a winning formula. You didn't turn the ball over today. But the thing that stands out to me is the 9 rushes for 34 yards. Of course, the 34-yard touchdown run being the highlight of those plays. And when the Giants tailor their offense to their quarterback, he seems to be much more productive. When they create running plays for him. Now maybe, a lot of people have given the Giants offensive line a lot of problems over the last few years, which they have been garbage for the most part. but they have been pretty decent this year. I think Hernandez is really turning into a decent piece on there too, and of course the rookie is doing a very good job as well. But I think that when they're all working together and they're creating space for the quarterback to hit that hole and break it and take it to the house, he's shown he can do it. He even had that 80-yard run earlier this year where he fell down and kind of became the butt of jokes on social media and Giant fans and people that just want to root against the Giants, mocking him for that. But I don't understand how you can mock a guy who broke off an 80-yard run. I believe it was on Monday Night Football too. And okay, he was moving so quickly that he tripped over his own feet. I mean, it's no butt fumble. It's no, you know, embarrassing or highly embarrassing moment, not to mention that they still ended up scoring the touchdown on that drive anyway. But Daniel Jones is a pretty good mobile quarterback behind center. And I think he proved today that he doesn't even need to throw a touchdown pass to be effective in this game. And that touchdown made it 14-3 when he first took it in. And you got to tip your cap to the kid. He's been playing well. He might be a little turnover prone at times. He might have, um, happy feet in the pocket at times, and might be prone to a mistake every once in a while. But Daniel Jones is a serviceable NFL quarterback, and if you put a good enough team around him, I think Daniel Jones can take it to the playoffs. Um, and you see over the last 2 weeks, look, the Giants, the Giants started off 1-7. And sure, when you look at the teams they beat the last 2 weeks, both flawed teams, highly flawed teams. It's not like they were beating Brady and the Buccaneers. But if you want to go back a couple of weeks, the Giants took Brady and the Buccaneers to the limit on Monday Night Football a few weeks ago. They for most of that game, it really looked like the Giants were going to win until Brady came up behind and as he's so often done over the last 20 years, snatched that game from their clutches. And the Giants, as they've done so many times over the last couple of years, snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. But you know, Daniel Jones is proving over the last couple of weeks that he has the winning formula, or can he can win if you put if the team performs around him, and if his complementary players do their job. Now, I thought that early on this season, Joe Judge was getting more praise than any 1 in 5, 6, and 7 coach in his NFL career has ever gotten in their life in the history of the NFL. But Joe Judge has proven that you can tell this is a better coached team than they've had the last few years. This is a more productive team than they've had the last few years. And the first half of the season, it wasn't showing up on the field for the most part. I mean, they'd look good at times and they'd look really, really bad at times. 1-7, Bill Parcells said you are what your record says you are. And 1-7 is exactly what they were. Trash. But you know what? Over the last 2 weeks, what's their record? 2-0. And even though they beat a very bad Washington Redskins team, which by the way looked pretty damn good today, they ended up losing on a last-second field goal. But it looks like Alex Smith and the Washington Redskins are playing pretty decent football, so they might not be as big of a pushover as people think they are. But they also went out and beat a good but flawed Philadelphia Eagles team today, and you have to give them credit for that. I mean, they had plenty of standouts. You see Wayne Gallman, 18 carries, 53 yards. Like I said about Jones, that's not going to knock your socks off. But you know what is? 2 touchdowns. If you had him in fantasy today, I'm sure you're pretty happy. Darius Slayton goes out there, 5 catches, 93 yards. That's a good day. Jabril Peppers, 6 tackles, half a sack, 2 tackles for loss. That guy was all over the place today, and finally, one of the bigger pieces from the Odell Beckham Jr. trade is really looking like he's a legit piece in that secondary. You know, Logan. I gotta say too, a lot of people, rightfully so for the most part, have really taken Dave Gettleman to task, and he has some hits, he has some misses, but you know what? I'll give him credit for this. When you look at 4 guys that I'm going to name, Logan Ryan signed as a free agent this offseason. James Bradbury signed as a free agent this offseason. Julian Love, drafted last season out of Notre Dame, which I don't know if you can even see my YouTube stream right now, but I'm decked out in Notre Dame gear, and I was definitely a big fan of Julian Love. And Blake Martinez, the linebacker, the former Green Bay Packer, he was a outstanding linebacker. He's been an outstanding signing for this Giants team. All four of those guys directly can be put, as a victory in the column for Dave Gettleman. All those guys have played great. I mean, James Bradbury this season has played at a Pro Bowl caliber. And I know a lot of people, you know, laugh at the Pro Bowl, which, of course, it's probably one of the least prestigious of the quote unquote All Star games for all the four major sports. But James Bradbury has been maybe not even Pro Bowl, maybe an All Pro, which means, if you know the difference, a Pro Bowl, a lot of guys are going to get named to the Pro Bowl. A lot of guys aren't going to go to it. But if you're an All Pro, that means you are named by coaches and your peers as the best player in your position in football. And James Bradbury's name could be on that list right now. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying he's going to get it, but you could put him down on that list of consideration. And not to mention, he can definitely go down as one of the best free agent signings this offseason. No doubt about it. Another guy who had a good day, Dexter Lawrence, couple of tackles, a sack. Can't argue with that. Now, like I said, the last time the Giants beat the Eagles was on November 6th, 2016, when Eli Manning led them to the victory. 4 touchdown passes and a 28-23 win. Since then, they lost 8 straight. So, getting this monkey off their back, getting, you know, when you're looking at everything that the Giants have in front of them right now, 27-17 victory today in Philadelphia. They're feeling good about themselves. Now they have a chance to look at the rest of the season and say, okay, we got 6 games left. We're 3-7. 3-7 isn't great, but you know what is great about 3-7? You are not far out of a playoff berth. The Eagles are helped out by the fact that they do have a tie, which that doesn't, like, most of the time you'd think that having a tie would hurt you. But the NFC East is so bad this season that the fact that they can't lose that game might actually help them. Because otherwise, what are they? They're 3-5-1 right now. They can't lose. So what's the most amount of games they could, even if they lose every game for the rest of the season, which they're probably not, because they're probably going to straighten themselves out at some point. Carson Wentz looked okay today, but they could not convert on third down. They could not get things done. But even if everything works out, the least they could be is 3-12-1. So it wouldn't surprise me, as crazy as it sounds, to see a 9-loss team maybe coming out of this division as the winner. Would it surprise you? Maybe if they go 6-8-1 or 7, or whatever it would be. I think 7-8-1, whatever it would be. I think the it's gonna be you're probably gonna have a bad team winning this division. But you know what, Giants fans? Why not dream about the fact that you can win this division? Why not dream about the fact that right now, even though you're 3-7, and even though most years you could pretty much flush any hopes of a division title down the toilet, that's not going to be the case this year, because the Giants have it right in front of them. They have it completely laid out right in front of them. Where as long as they play smart football, as long as they do the things they need to do, and Joe Judge needs to keep, just coaching them in the right direction, and they look like a more prepared team this year. It's right. I mean, look, the next week when they come back, they're playing Cincinnati. Um, it's 2 weeks because they're going into a bye, but 2 weeks from today, after Thanksgiving, they're going to be playing the Cincinnati Bengals. That's a winnable game. How can it not be? That's if you want to get on a winning streak, which people say 3 is a streak. 2 is good. That's back-to-back wins. 3 is a streak. Get on a streak next week. You beat 2 division rivals in Washington and Philadelphia. Now keep that going against Cincinnati. Two out of those 3 games, by the way, were on the road. So they're gonna have a tough one after that in Seattle, where especially any week now, Jamal Adams should be back. So that defense is gonna take a big step forward, and that's going to be a tough one, especially with Russ Wilson the way he's played this year. But after that, you get three out of your last four games. Arizona, sure, Arizona's a good team, no doubt about it, and they had a very good, exciting game today against the Buffalo Bills, but that's a win. That's a winnable game, especially at home. Okay, the week before, December 6th, week 13, going to Seattle, that's a tough game to win. You can't expect the Giants to win that game. That's tough. But at home against Arizona, you can you can pretty much envision the Giants winning. It would be an upset against a former division rival, if anybody alive still remembers the Arizona Cardinals being in the NFC East. But the Cleveland Browns, the week after that, that's a chance to get yourself going. That's a chance. And then after that, you have the Baltimore Ravens, and you finish up with the Dallas Cowboys, who, as we all know, Dallas has, you know, Dallas has been very inconsistent, and there seems to be an uprising against Coach Mike McCarthy. But the Dallas Cowboys, especially with Dak Prescott being on the sideline with his horrific injury early this year, that's definitely winnable games. So you can even say three out of those last four games are winnable. After Seattle, the only game that you really can say that they really don't have a shot at winning is the game in Baltimore, Week 16, December 27th. So, look, if the Giants can right the ship and they can make this possibly, I mean, 6-10, you still have a shot of winning this division, which is scary. 6-10, maybe 7-9 if they really, if the only two games they lose the rest of the season are to Seattle and Baltimore, they'd finish the season 7-9. And that in this division, there's no doubt in my mind you can slip into the playoffs with that. And that's what the Giants and the Giants fans have to keep in mind. The season is not over. The ability to get in the playoffs um, with this crazy season that we're seeing unfold in front of us, especially in the NFC East right now. Um, Coming into the day, the Philadelphia Eagles were the leaders in this division at 3-4-1. Now they're 3-5-1, and they still lead the division just based off winning percentage. The Giants at 3-7. Washington fell to 2-7 today. Dallas is in a bye, so this is where you just have to be positive, and you just have to look at the schedule and say it's possible. The wins are there. They got a lot of the tough games out of the way. They got two tough games left: Baltimore and Seattle, both on the road. If you win the home games that you're supposed to win, like they did today against Philadelphia, you got a shot. And you see, I saw on Twitter before I came on, guys like Eli Manning and Saquon Barkley were really excited and talking about stacking W's and getting this team righted on getting this ship above water, and that's what they have. It's the Giants early on this season. It looked like the orca from Jaws, where it looked like it was going underneath and there was a big shark circling them, and the season was over. But you know what? The Giants were able to keep the team together, keep everybody on the same page, um, not get down on themselves like a lot of teams have. Like it looks like the Cowboys have, like I mentioned earlier, that there's a pretty much an uprising going on with the Green Bay, not the Green Bay Packers, that's his former team, the Dallas Cowboys, where this is the team that was predicted by many to win the division coming into the year, especially when you have tools like Ezekiel Elliott, uh, their standout running back, Dak Prescott coming into the season before his injury. There's so many reasons to think that Dallas Cowboys were the team to beat coming into this year, but right now everything's up in the air. And this game today was Philadelphia's chance to put their foot on the Giants' throat and say, don't even think about it. You beat a trash Redskins team, well, Washington football team last week, 23-20. But you know what? The Giants didn't care about that. The Giants said, we got the win last week. It didn't matter. Well, I mean, if you look at the Giants' last couple of games, let's look at this right now, right? The Giants had the game um, Week 5, October 11th against Dallas. They lost that game 37-34. They should have won that game. That was a game there's no doubt about they should have won. Then the game against Washington, 20-19, a big win, no doubt about it. I mean, people kind of poo-pooed it at the time, really didn't think too much about it because it was against a bad team, but they won that game. That's what matters. Then they go out and lose an absolute heartbreaker on Thursday night in Week 7 to the Eagles 22-21. That was one of those games that I was talking about earlier, where you can, you really can say that, like I said earlier, they snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. Somehow they ended up blowing that game. I still don't even know how they blew it. And then the week after that, Monday Night Football against Tampa Bay, like I mentioned earlier, they lost that game 25-23. That's a game there's no way they should have lost that game. But they did. Missed opportunity after missed opportunity. But you know what? The last 2 weeks, they did not let opportunities slip away from their clutches. They beat Washington, they beat Philadelphia, and now they have a relatively winnable schedule from week, 12 when they come back from the bye on. Week 12 to week 17, those are games they could win. There's only 2 games in there where you can pretty much say, I don't expect them to win, but hey, who knows? 2020 has been crazy enough. Would you be surprised if the Giants went into Seattle or Baltimore and won one of those games? I mean, I know history doesn't dictate over the last couple of years that the Giants are going to get a unwinnable game and win it some way. But you know what? Maybe they're starting to turn it right now. Maybe the coaching and the guidance and the vision of Joe Judge is sending the Giants into the win column from here on out. I mean, look, last year, and I know this is a terrible comparison when you look at what happened this season, but last year the Jets started off 1-7, and everybody buried them, including myself, and I thought Adam Gase should have been fired last year. But you know what? There's not a person on the planet at the Week 8 mark where the Jets were 1-7 that would have told you the Jets would have finished the season 7-9, and they did. Because you know what? The rest of the season, there was winnable games. They got themselves on a roll. And even though it didn't carry over to this season, and even though it really didn't mean anything except hurting their draft position, they ended up winning 7 games. It's not impossible. If the Jets were in the NFC East this year and did just that, they would have made the playoffs. And that's all the Giants have to do. They have it right in front of them. They have destiny in front of them. The Eagles completely left the door open. The Eagles took their boot and kicked the door open and said, Giants, please come in and take this division from us. That's exactly what they did. And now it's up to Joe Judge and the boys to get it done. Like I said, this team is heading in the right direction. I think the Giants made the right pick with this head coach from everything I've seen, especially over the last few weeks. And even though I think those games against Philadelphia and Tampa Bay back to back, that they came out on the short end, I think that has them motivated and has them believing that they can be in every game to the last play, be in every game and have a chance to win it. And you know what? Those games, well, early on, were blowing up in their face, like the game against Chicago that they should have won. The game against Pittsburgh early on in the season where they played well, but not well enough to win. Really, the only game where the Giants got blown out this season was Week 3 against San Francisco. Every other game, even the game in LA, that nobody thought the Giants really had a chance to even contend in, they still hung in there, and in the beginning of the fourth quarter, had a chance to win that game. So now, it's all about sitting back and getting the job done. And the Giants are on the right path. And with that, I'm going to take my first break of the day, ladies and gentlemen. I bet you didn't think I'd spend the first half of the show talking about the New York Football Giants, but they're giving me a reason to do it, and I'm happy to do it. And when we come back on the other side, I'll be talking a little Mets and Yankees, a little hot stove, touch on the Jets maybe a little bit, and we also have start dates in the NBA and NHL potentially. The NBA is going to be starting up on November 22nd, and the NHL is looking at New Year's Day, January 1st, 2021. So hopefully everything's going to work to go. Hopefully COVID doesn't get in the way of these temporary dates. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. Thanks for sticking with me. And that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for sticking with me here once again on Sports Talk 1240. I'm your host, Rob Cramer, and this is This Day in Sports History. This day in sports history, on November 15th, 1961, Roger Maris is named the AL MVP on the heels of hitting a record-breaking 61 home runs for the New York Yankees and winning the World Series over the Cincinnati Reds. On this date, November 15th, 1967, after winning the AL Triple Crown with hitting 326, 44 home runs, and 121 RBIs, he took home the first Triple Crown since Mickey Mantle in 1956. Carl Yastrzemski is named the AL MVP for the Impossible Dream Red Sox team that he led to the World Series, their first appearance in 21 years at that point, since 1946. He killed it in the series, hitting 400 with 3 home runs and 5 RBIs, but unfortunately, Bob Gibson's St. Louis Cardinals would take it home in 7 games, 4-3. On this date, November 15th, 1970, after winning 3 NFL championships with the Cleveland Browns, legendary head coach Paul Brown leads the expansion Cincinnati Bengals to their first win against the rival Cleveland Browns, a 14-10 victory, and after the win, Brown would call it his greatest victory. On this date, November 15th, 1983, the Islanders win their ninth out of 10 games to right the ship after a tough 4-7 start to the season against the Hartford Whalers as Mike Bossy scores a hat trick, the 75th Islanders hat trick in their history at that point. They would win that game 6-4 at the Nassau Coliseum, and they would go to their fifth consecutive Stanley Cup final. And finally, on this date, November 15th, 2015, relative unknown Holly Holm defeats UFC Women's Champion Ronda Rousey in a gigantic upset in Melbourne, Australia. She would turn around and lose the championship shortly after that, but that would end up being a Buster Douglas Tyson type upset after Holm would take down Rousey, pretty much ending her UFC career. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is this day in sports history. All right, so thanks for sticking around here with me on this windy, cold Sunday night, November 15th, right here, as we have, you know, a lot to still cover. Like I said before the break, the NHL and the NBA released their target dates. Well, actually, the NHL's is just a target date. The NBA's is effectively December 22nd. They want to get it going again, the regular season, which means that at some point in the next couple of weeks, they're going to be having camp and everything along those lines coming back. The Knicks had some guys in their training facility in Greenburgh, New York, really getting loose and playing for the first time. You got to remember, too, the Knicks have not played any basketball with each other or in any respect since March. Since March 12th was the last time they had a game they won, by the way, against the Atlanta Hawks in overtime, 137-134. And I don't even have notes on that. I just remember it. But but the Knicks, they're gonna be in a big spot this week too, as the NBA draft is being held this week. There's a lot about that. The Knicks picking eighth. I'd like to go into it more if they had a higher pick and we really could really level it down to who they are, who they pick. But you know, just seeing how the Knicks do it in years past. I mean, when they had the ninth pick a couple of years ago, there's no way anybody would have guessed they were going to pick Frank Ntilikina. So who would have seen that coming? After that, who would have seen the Knicks picking Kevin Knox? After that, nobody even. I mean, I'm sure people mentioned his name, but nobody would have had any idea they were going to pick Kevin Knox. And even the year the Knicks had the number 4 pick and had Kristaps Porzingis, and that ended up being a great pick for them at the time. It didn't play out well for them, unfortunately, but nobody really, especially even when they picked Porzingis, the fans booed because nobody really knew who he was. It was stupid of the fans to boo because he's a 18, 19-year-old kid at the time that nobody really knew anything about. But that just goes to show that nobody really knows what you're getting with these kids. And aside from the top couple of picks that could be a swing and a miss at times too, the New York Knicks, they're going to do what they're going to do, and we're just going to have to see. I think Tom Thibodeau right now, I think the Knicks are in the best position they've been in for a while. They have tons of draft capital now. They have a really good head coach. I think Leon Rose is a good general manager, and whatever his actual title is, the guy that's running the show over there at the Garden now. So I think the Knicks are really set up right now. I just hope they don't do anything stupid. There have been a lot of rumors this past week about Russell Westbrook requesting a trade from the Houston Rockets. Now, look, I'm totally, totally on board for getting Westbrook. Totally. There's no doubt about it. But I've heard a lot of people discuss it. You don't get stupid. I heard people say, oh, well, you give him Kevin Knox and a first round draft pick. Absolutely not. If you're turning around and you're giving a first round draft pick for Russell Westbrook, who's now 32, he's 31, 32 years old, whatever it was. He just had a birthday the other day. You're not giving a first round pick for a guy making $40 million. That is a cap killer. Even if you're gonna have them take back a guy like Julius Randle, if you're gonna have them take back his massive salary too, that's still not even half of Russell Westbrook's salary. I mean, Russell Westbrook realistically is signed for 3 years and 140 or so $1 million. So you pretty much are almost you gotta factor in $40 to $45 for this guy a year. Now, is he a great player? Yes. Is he one of the best players in basketball? Yes. Is he worth giving up a first round pick and mortgaging your future for this guy? Absolutely not. The Knicks should do everything they can to improve their scouting, improve their ability to make deals, and don't give up assets for a guy that I mean, look, if Russell Westbrook was 26 years old right now, I wouldn't have this hard a stance. But a guy that's 31, 32 years old, what's he going to do? Is he going to turn this team into a 50 win, 60 win championship contender right off the bat? No, he's not. He's going to go out there, he's going to get his triple doubles, he's going to score 40 points a game, and that's what he does. He's gonna have a really great numbers. He's gonna electrify the hopefully there soon Garden audience, but he's not gonna really be able to do much other than that because this team at best, if you add him and whoever they pick at number 8 right now, this team is what? You're lucky if they get 35, 40 on the highest of high ends, maybe 45 wins. This isn't a championship contender. You're not beating LeBron James in the finals with that team. And as a matter of fact, you're probably not even winning your division with the Toronto Raptors, the Boston Celtics, and the now sitting here at the table Brooklyn Nets with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving staring in your face. So you still wouldn't even be the best team in your city, most likely. So Be smart. If you can get Russ, look, I'll give up Kevin Knox for Russell Westbrook, and certain a couple of things here, a couple of things there, but not draft picks. I'm not giving up. I mean, maybe a second round pick, but I'm not giving up a first round pick because the main thing that you're giving up for Russell Westbrook is that you're taking his cap hit, that you're taking 40 million off the books for the Houston Rockets. So don't be stupid, Knicks. Don't be stupid, Leon Rose, and add this guy with his $40 million salary. Um, that you really that he's going to be a cap crusher, especially if you still have Julius Randle and Taj Gibson and a couple of guys making big money, Bobby Portis on this team right now. You're going to need that cap flexibility going forward, and cap flexibility is as big of an asset as draft picks these days. So I get it that Russell Westbrook being here is going to make the Knicks a more attractive destination to certain free agents and certain people around the league, and maybe television executives putting the Knicks on prime time more often than that, which really doesn't matter to me. All I care about is wins. But don't be stupid. Don't trade your assets, and don't hamstring yourself for short-sighted success. Because as much as I think Carmelo Anthony gets a lot of heat in this city, unduly. Carmelo Anthony was a great Knick. He didn't take the Knicks to the finals or even the conference finals like I would have liked, but Carmelo Anthony wanted to be here. Carmelo Anthony, um, you know, he did everything he could to become a Knick, but the thing that screwed that deal up, they could have just signed him as a free agent in free agency 2011, but James Dolan got involved and forced his hand with Donnie Walsh, which pretty much forced Donnie Walsh out the door because they traded everybody for this guy. You could have had such a nice core. They ended up trading Timothy Mozgov. They ended up trading Danilo Gallinari. They ended up trading a multitude of first round draft picks. You didn't have to do that. You could have kept those assets and had Carmelo Anthony 4 months later. But Dolan didn't want to get patient. He wanted to pair Carmelo in his prime with what he thought was Amari Stoudemire in his prime, and they got short sighted and hamstringed themselves for the future. And you can't do that. You just can't. And that's why the window for the Knicks' success there was like what, 2 or 3 seasons? You know, they made the playoffs a couple of times. They got to the second round once. They got knocked out by the Pacers, and bada bing, that was it. That's the Carmelo Anthony in a nutshell. But you know what? I really want to keep it going here. And as I got hung up on the Knicks there for a minute as I stood on my pedestal, um, and I want to really look at this situation right now going on with everything else. Actually, before I get into the Mets, I want to take a call from my buddy Dave. Dave, you're on Sports Talk 1240. How you doing tonight, buddy? I'm just I can't see which ones they are. Dave, I'm sorry, I can't hear you right now. I'm having a glitch in here. I'm gonna have to let you go, buddy. But thanks for calling me in. I'll have to get back to you the next time I'm on. I can't get on it, but I'm sorry about that, man. I can't hear anything. But what's it called? So with that, I'm gonna have to just get into the Mets real quick. Um, so Steve Cohen held a press conference introducing himself to the media and Mets fans earlier this year. Earlier last week. I'm sorry. And with that, he also reintroduced Sandy Alderson to the Mets faithful and the press alike, as this time the team president Sandy Alderson, and shortly after the deal was concluded, they fired Brody Van Wagenen and all of his lieutenants and everything along those lines. All the big wigs in the Mets, higher ups, Brody Van Wagenen, Allard Byard, and everybody underneath them was pretty much let go, except for a handful of people that Sandy was really already familiar with. Um, what's it called? So I think one thing that you can really take away from the Steve Cohen press conference is how he really hit it out of the ballpark. He really, um, he really showed the professionalism and the openness and the honesty that we haven't seen from the Wilpons at all in the last 15 years. It was all veiled, you know, insanity with those guys. They really you didn't really know what they were saying. They were saying one thing out of one side of their mouth and then saying another out of the other side of their mouth. And what I will say is that you could tell by the way people have perceived that press conference just over the last week, the not only the excitement of Met fans, not only the excitement of the media, it's guys like Noah Syndergaard. Noah Syndergaard on Twitter, he's one of those guys everybody knows that he puts out tweets all the time and he's very social media active. He put out it's called a GIF, one of those things where you see. If you don't know what a GIF is, I'm sorry, I can't explain it. But he put out a thing of a guy running through a brick wall for just a couple of things that Steve Cohen said. And a guy like who's not on the Mets, Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer, who's the reigning National League Cy Young winner this season for the Cincinnati Reds. Now he's a free agent. He's getting ready to cash in big time. Um, you know, Steve Cohen went out there and was just talking from the heart and everything, and it really turned on a guy like Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer came out and said multiple times. Actually, Trevor Bauer actually put out a video on his YouTube praising Sandy and the Mets, which he actually did also in an interview. But he titled this video Steve Cohen's Brilliant Start. So if you want to see what the video I'm talking about, go on YouTube, punch in Trevor Bauer and Steve Cohen's Brilliant Start. He lists a bunch of the things that he really enjoyed from what Steve Cohen's done right off the bat. The engagement that he's had with fans on Twitter. If you don't know, Steve Cohen is on Twitter at Stephen A. Cohen 2, the number 2. So if you want to check out anything that he's done, if you haven't heard his social media presence, he has been more active on social media than most owners in any sport. And it's very um, foreign from the idea of the Wilpon regime, where there were many you know rumors going around that maybe Jeff Wilpon had a couple of fake Twitter accounts where he would go on there and talk about how great Jeff Wilpon was. Um, this guy Steve Cohen, who by the way just got verified today on Twitter, so he's got that blue check mark next to his name. He's been engaging with fans on Twitter. Then you see, I was going to mention this myself, but Trevor Bauer did it. Steve Cohen went out there, and the first thing he said, well, not, one of the first things, was that he wants to win a championship within 3 to 5 years. And if they didn't hit that timeline, um, he, he'd be very disappointed. He said 3 to 5 years. Now think about this: the Dodgers, who have been one of the better teams in the league, the last time they didn't make the playoffs was 2012. Now, 2012 was the first year of that new ownership group when Frank McCourt's team, when the McCourt family, former owners of the Dodgers, sold to the Magic Johnson led group for just around $2 billion 8 years ago. They didn't make the playoffs that year. They made a couple of big trades, big moves. They acquired the contracts of Adrian Gonzalez from Boston, Josh Beckett from Boston, Carl Crawford came over in that deal. So they made a couple of big moves to position themselves to win in the future. Um, and they really picked up and bailed the Red Sox out because Boston would go on to win the World Series next year with their revamped team behind GM Dave Dombrowski. But they did the right thing. They did exactly what they needed to do. They made a couple of big moves. They improved their scouting. They improved their development. And now, when you look at their team, like I mentioned the last time I was on the air 2 weeks ago, every single pitcher that started a game for the Dodgers this World Series run, where they are now the 2020 World Series champions, was signed and developed by the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, that might not sound like much, but that means a lot. That shows just how good the Dodgers are from top to bottom in their organization. Um, and that's what they want the Mets to be like. Now, what I was starting off talking about the Dodgers for and heaping praise on them is that they made the playoffs every year from 2013 on. They've won 7 or 8, whatever it is, consecutive division titles now. And it took them all this time, 8 years, 8 long seasons to win the title. Sure, they've made the NLCS many times. They've been in the mix every season for the championship. People are always saying, oh, it's going to be a Yankees Dodgers World Series. It's going to be a Dodgers Red Sox World Series, or the National League team that most people thought would be making the World Series over the last 8 years is the Dodgers because they've been so well positioned, and that's what Steve Cohen wants, and just shows how hard it is to win a World Series. That even when you have the resources and you have the right people and you have the scouting and the people in the positions that you want, they are still able to turn around and get you there, but it doesn't mean that you're gonna win the World Series because it's kind of a crapshoot. And this season was kind of an anomaly because even with all the playoff games they played, they really only played half a season. They played 60 regular season games and probably somewhere around 20 or so postseason games, maybe a little less than that, maybe a little more, give or take, whatever it is. But you still only played in total half of a season, which means that just based off those games alone, that's only bringing you from April to July. So they'd still have an entire half of the season and playoff run to go, which usually, you know, what the Dodgers have shown, they kind of ran out of gas. Whether it's in the first round against the Mets, like they got knocked out in 2015, whether it's the NLCS, like they've been knocked out with whoever they played, whether it's the Cubs or the St. Louis Cardinals or whoever's taking them out that year, or when they get to the World Series and they lose back-to-back World Series like they did in 17 and 18 against the Houston Astros and the Boston Red Sox. Now, whether you want to say that they were cheating or whatever the you know asterisk you want to throw on that is anyway, it's still the fact that they still came up short. In the record books, you can call the Houston Astros cheaters all you want, but you know, they're 2017 World Series champions. The Boston Red Sox, you might be able to throw a stank eye at them and say they did some unsavory things in the 2018 season as well under manager Alex Cora. But guess what? The record books will always show that the Los Angeles Dodgers lost to the Boston Red Sox in the 2018 World Series. But you know what? It's also going to show. The record books are also going to show that no matter what you want to say about the 2020 season, the Los Angeles Dodgers ended their 32-year drought for championships and won the World Series this year. And that's where the Mets want to be. Whether it's 2021, 2022, 2025, 2030, no matter what it is, some point in the next few years of Steve Cohen's ownership, they want to win a championship. And that's the main thing. They want to be the East Coast Dodgers. They want to have competitive payroll. They want to have they want to be in the mix. And one thing that stood out to me too is that Sandy Alderson said, no, there's a couple of things Sandy said actually. Sandy said that they're going to be shopping in the gourmet aisle as opposed to the discount bin, which that's very, if you're using um, all the lingo that have been used by the Mets shopping in the frozen food aisle, or everything that's been thrown at them the last couple of years, mostly from Michael Conforto's agent, Scott Boras. But when you just look at everything that has been thrown at the Mets the last few years, this is their chance to get out of that discount bin mindset. This is the chance to sit down at the big boy table and finally get the job done. And what Sandy said that I was alluding to earlier was that he said they don't want to be known just for winning. They want to be known for how they win, which means how they handle themselves, how they treat their players, how they develop their players, how it, how they're it's like Tampa Bay Rays. The Tampa Bay Rays went from 15 years ago being a joke team. 15 years, a complete joke. Nobody took them seriously. They were the Tampa Bay Devil Rays at the time. Um, they they really nobody took them seriously. They were just an expansion team that everybody looked at as kind of a joke, and nobody thought they'd ever be able to get out of their own way. Well, 15 years later, that's 2005, or even 2006, or even 2007. 2008, they got Joe Madden in there. They changed their identity from the Devil Rays to the Rays, which really didn't mean much. It was just, you know, whatever. I guess they liked Rays better. But they branded themselves differently. They changed their mindset, and boom, 2008, they get to the World Series. They lost to the Phillies, but that was the beginning of them proving that the forward thinking, that the scouting, that the way that they managed their people was a good thing. And from over the last, from 2008, 12, 13 years on, they have been one of the best run teams in baseball. And sure, they have made the playoffs every year. They haven't even been in the mix every single season. They've had down years just like any other team because they have payroll constraints. But you know what? Every Especially over the last couple of years, Tampa Bay has just proven time and time again that they are a team to be reckoned with. And they are a team that has a formula for how they do things. And people around the league recognize that and respect that. And that's what the Mets need to get. They need to get the respect and they need to get the formula that Tampa Bay has. And don't take Tampa Bay's formula. Make your own formula. That's another thing too that Steve Cohen and Sandy made clear. They didn't want to be compared to the Yankees. They didn't want to be compared to the Braves or the Dodgers or anything else, even though people refer to them as the East Coast Dodgers and in training or whatever you want to say. But they need to develop their own formula, their own identity, and separate themselves from everything that the Wilpons have made them over the last 20 years. And that is, at most times, a laughing stock. But quickly, just looking at some of the things, JT Realmuto, that's still on the table for the Mets. Charlie Morton, don't be surprised if the Mets take a look at Charlie Morton to round out that rotation. Brad Hand, I really loved what Sandy Ellison said about Brad Hand. Um, he mentioned that if the timing had been differently, there's a good chance that they would have jumped at the opportunity to claim Brad Hand because it's about the asset, not the money or the price you have to pay for that asset, which I love to hear. Also, don't forget about George Springer. And to touch on the Yankees real quick in transition, there have been a rumor going around that there's a potential for a Seth Lugo for Gary Sanchez trade, which I don't really know. I mean, it's an intriguing possibility. I don't know if I would do it if I was either side, to be quite honest, because how bad would the Yankees look if Gary Sanchez turns into this all-pro catcher with the Mets now, and how bad would the Mets look if Seth Lugo ends up going to the Yankees and ends up becoming, whatever they want to use him as, a great starting pitcher or the best relief pitcher in baseball, whatever the situation calls for. So I don't think that trade is going to happen. It's interesting to talk and think about, though. And it's going to be interesting even more so to see DJ LeMahieu, who just finished third in the MVP voting, come back to the Yankees with whatever contract they work out with. Wouldn't surprise me to see something along the lines of 20 to 25 million a year for 3 or 4 years. So we'll see how that is. The Yankees really have a couple of interesting decisions ahead of them this offseason. But I'm coming around the final lap here, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to thank you for sticking with me for as long as you have. I just want to finish up. Like I mentioned earlier, the NHL is targeting January 1st, New Year's Day, 2021, as their potential for starting the season. The OHL, I know, is targeting the January 8th, and the AHL, the American League, the affiliate league of the NHL, where they have their minor league players participate, is looking at February 4th. So, some point early on in 2021, we should be getting hockey again. And it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out with a lot of COVID cases popping up in really everywhere in the States over the last few weeks as we have the cold weather coming in now. So let's just hope and keep our fingers crossed that both the NBA and NHL can get their return to play format finalized. The NBA actually has, but let's just keep our fingers crossed that stays as is December 22nd. And January 1st for the NHL would be great to see hockey again, which means that at some point we're going to be seeing Matt Barzal and the Islanders and Barry Trotz and that team after their great run to the conference finals. this year they're going to be coming back. Alexi Lafreniere, Artemi Panarin, and the New York Rangers coming back. Even the Devils have a lot to be happy about as they have a great little core there with Hughes and everything else. So, um, you know, for the metro area, we could have a lot of fun with hockey as it comes back. There's a possibility if the Devils play well, we could even have three playoff teams from this area for the first time in quite some time. I think 2007 was the last time, 2008, one of those years, was the last time all three teams from the metro area made the playoffs. So let's keep that in mind. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Everybody stay safe from COVID. I want to thank you for joining me here tonight as I'm just about finished up. I want to thank Brian, my engineer, for being the best behind the glass tonight. I couldn't have asked for a better lead-in than Bill Donahue. So thank you for sticking here with me. And I'll be back in a couple of weeks. Have a great week and have a great Thanksgiving. I'll talk to you next time. The views expressed in the previous program did not necessarily represent those of the staff.